You picked it up 14 times today before noon. You didn't mean to. You weren't even bored. Something inside you just reached. The same way your hand finds a doorknob in the dark without thinking, without choosing, without asking permission. And here's what's strange. Each time you put it down, you felt a tiny flicker of relief. Then, within minutes, an itch, a pull, a quiet, sourceless anxiety you couldn't quite name. So you picked it up again. This is not weakness. This is not laziness. This is one of the most sophisticated behavioral traps ever constructed. And it was engineered by people who understood your brain far better than you understand it yourself. But to see how the trap was built, you have to go back, way back, past the apps, past the internet, past electricity itself. Because the real story starts about 2 million years ago, on an open savanna, with a brain that was trying very hard not to die. Your brain did not evolve to be happy. It evolved to survive. And survival, for most of human history, required one thing above all others: noticing. Missing a shadow moving in the tall grass could get you killed. Ignoring a sound you didn't recognize could cost you everything. The human who stayed alert, who kept scanning, kept checking, kept asking, what was that? Was the human who lived long enough to pass their genes forward. Natural selection did not reward the calm and incurious. It rewarded the anxious and vigilant. So your brain became a machine for detecting novelty, a system that cannot look away from movement, that cannot ignore an unexpected sound, that assigns urgent biological priority to the question, has something changed? For 2 million years, this kept you alive. Then, roughly 15 years ago, someone put that instinct in your pocket and connected it to the internet. Neuroscientist Kent Berridge at the University of Michigan spent decades pulling apart a distinction that most people never think to make. He was studying the brain's reward system, and he noticed something odd, that the chemicals driving desire were not the same chemicals producing satisfaction. He called these two separate systems wanting and liking. Wanting is the feeling that pulls you towards something, that tug, that itch, that need to check. It runs on dopamine, and here's the critical thing. Dopamine does not fire when you receive a reward. It fires when your brain anticipates one. When there is a chance, even a small one, that something good might be waiting. Liking is the feeling you get when you actually find what you were looking for. It runs on the opioid system, and in a genuinely satisfying experience, wanting and liking work together, the pull of desire met by the warmth of satisfaction. But they can be uncoupled, and when they are, you get craving without pleasure, reaching without arrival, the compulsive need to check something that almost never delivers what the check was promising. This is the trap your phone has set so cleanly. Every notification, every buzz, every small red number on an icon. Your dopamine circuit fires. Your brain says something might be there, something might matter, something could change. Your wanting system ignites before your conscious mind has even registered what happened. But when you check, usually there's nothing meaningful. A group chat message, an ad for something you searched 3 weeks ago, a post from an account you don't fully remember following. The liking system barely responds. The reward is thin. And yet, and this is the mechanism that everything else depends on, you check again. You check sooner. You check more. Because here is what Berridge's research and decades of behavioral science before and after him makes undeniably clear. A small, unpredictable reward produces far more compulsive behavior than a large, reliable one. Psychologist B.F. Skinner demonstrated this with disturbing clarity in his experiments with pigeons in the 1930s. He found that when a pigeon received a food pellet every single time it pressed a lever, it would press in a calm, measured way. When it was hungry, it pressed, and when it wasn't, it rested. But when the pellet arrived randomly, sometimes on the second press, sometimes on the 12th, sometimes not at all, the pigeon pressed compulsively, frantically. It pressed far more in far less time than it ever had when the reward was guaranteed. Skinner called this a variable ratio reinforcement schedule. He identified it as the most powerful behavioral conditioning mechanism ever discovered in psychology. It produces behavior that is almost impossible to extinguish because the next press could always be the one that pays. Every time you scroll, you are a pigeon pressing that lever. You don't know which post will be the one that makes you laugh until your eyes water. You don't know when the message will arrive that changes your day. You don't know which photo will surface a memory that hits you somewhere real. The uncertainty is not accidental. It is the architecture. The not knowing is what keeps the dopamine circuit hot. Asa Raskin, the Silicon Valley designer who invented the infinite scroll, the mechanism that removes any natural stopping point from a social media feed, later said publicly that he deeply regrets creating it. He estimated that the feature alone generates roughly 200,000 hours of wasted human attention every single day across the world. There is no bottom. There is no signal that says, "That's everything, you're done." There is always one more thing just past your thumb, and your scanning, novelty-seeking, ancient brain cannot scroll past something new without checking whether it matters. This is not a personal failing. This is a billion-dollar engineering achievement applied directly to 2 million years of neurobiology. But the dopamine trap is only the first layer. Humans are among the most social animals on Earth. For most of your evolutionary history, belonging to a group was not a comfort. It was a survival requirement. The lone human on the savannah did not last long. Your tribe fed you. Your tribe protected you. Your tribe made it possible for your children to survive the years when they were too small to fend for themselves. Being accepted by your group meant safety. Being rejected, ostracized, exiled, cast out, was effectively a death sentence. Your brain evolved accordingly. Social information became survival-critical data. The emotional pain of exclusion became as real and as urgent as the physical pain of injury, because for most of human history, it was just as dangerous. Psychologist Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA confirmed this in a series of landmark studies using brain imaging. She had participants play a simple computerized ball-tossing game, then arranged for the other players, who were bots, to stop passing the ball, quietly excluding the participant from the game. What her scans showed stopped people in the field cold. The same neural regions that activate when you experience physical pain, when you burn yourself, when you break a bone, activated when people were left out of the game. Your brain does not distinguish between being hit and being ignored. Social pain activates the physical pain matrix. The hurt is real. The distress is biological. So when you post something and then wait, and the seconds stretch into minutes and no one responds, that quiet dread you feel is not vanity. It is your ancient nervous system running a survival check. It is asking, am I still accepted? Am I still part of the group? Is something wrong? And when you don't check, the anxiety builds. Because what if someone said something that requires a response? What if someone said something unkind and you don't know yet? What if the group has moved on and left a silence where you expected warmth? Your threat detection system cannot tell the difference between a hostile tribe and a quiet comment section, so it treats the uncertainty of both with the same urgency. There is a third mechanism at work, one less discussed, but just as powerful once you see it. Soviet psychologist Bluma Zygarnik noticed something unusual while sitting in a Viennese cafe in the 1920s. She observed that the waitstaff could recall, in precise detail, every item on every table that had not yet paid. The orders were still open. The transaction was unfinished. But the moment a customer paid and left, the moment the loop closed, the information vanished from the waiter's memory almost instantly. Zygarnik conducted formal experiments that confirmed what she had seen. The brain holds unfinished tasks differently than completed ones. It keeps them active. It returns to them unprompted. It generates a low-level, persistent pressure to resolve what is unresolved. This became known as the Zygarnik effect. Now look at your phone. Every notification you haven't opened is an unfinished loop. Every message you've read but not replied to. every article whose headline you scrolled past but didn't read, every like you received that you haven't checked yet. Your brain tags all of them as open, unresolved, incomplete, and it keeps sending you back to close them. The red badge on an app icon is not a simple visual indicator. It is a deliberately engineered open loop, designed by people who understood exactly what Zygarnik discovered, that your brain will return to incomplete things until they are finished. And the apps are built so that closing one loop immediately opens 3 more. There is no closing the loop. There is only more loop. Now here is the most disorienting thing about all of this, knowing it does not stop it. You can understand the dopamine circuitry. You can trace exactly how the variable reward schedule exploits your wanting system. You can recognize the social pain instinct firing in your chest when your post sits in silence. You can name the Zygarnik loops pulling at the edges of your attention, and 17 minutes from now, your hand will reach for your phone anyway. Because these systems do not operate in the part of your brain that reads and reflects and nods with recognition. They operate below conscious thought. They are faster than your awareness. They evolved long before language existed, long before you had words for what was happening to you. Understanding the trap does not dismantle it, but it changes your relationship to it. When you feel the anxiety building during a phone-free hour and you know it is a dopamine valley, not a real emergency, not a real social threat, but your anticipation system starved of its usual spike, you can sit with it differently. You can watch it rise and crest and begin to fall without feeding it. You can learn, slowly, that the itch does not mean danger. When you notice the social check happening, that urge to see who responded, to know where you stand, you can redirect that ancient instinct toward the actual human beings in your immediate life, the ones whose approval your nervous system was genuinely evolved to care about. When you catch a Zygarnik loop pulling at you, you can close it consciously and on your own terms, not the app's terms, not the notification's terms, but yours. None of this is easy. It was not designed to be easy. It was designed by some of the most talented behavioral engineers and persuasion researchers in the world, who studied your psychology with the same rigor that pharmacologists study addiction, because in many measurable ways, that is precisely what they were building. Asa Raskin has said this plainly. The technology was not optimized for your well-being. It was optimized for one thing, your continued attention. Everything else was secondary. You are not weak. You are not failing at some basic task of self-control that everyone else has mastered. You are a 2-million-year-old survival machine being run through a behavioral gauntlet designed in the last 15 years by some of the most sophisticated engineers on Earth. And most of them, the honest ones, the ones who have stepped back and looked clearly at what they built, will tell you the same thing. The system was not made to serve you. It was made to hold you. So tonight, when you pick it up without thinking, and you will, try to catch the moment just before. That fraction of a second where your hand moves before your mind has decided. That reach is 2 million years old. It scanned grasslands once. It listened for predators. It looked for food, for shelter, for the faces of people whose survival was bound to yours. Now it checks for likes. You picked it up 14 times before noon. Not because you are broken, but because the system was built by people who understood precisely and deliberately that a brain shaped to survive on a savanna is almost perfectly designed to be held by a screen.